Anyways, Andy, who's next?
Okay, so back to the log.
Yep.
We have Sierra with a WoW question.
Okay.
It's kind of also yeah, might have to repeat after. WoW raids and generally WoW historically had balance issues based around particular utilities and damage rankings of classes, which people cause people to be pigeonholed into playing a class that they might not want to play.
Mm-hmm.
If for other reason than just to secure their, for no other reason than secure their spot in raid.
Yeah.
Do you think this rigidity is a symptom of the game and class design, or a symptom of a modern player where you are based on performance, and like reaching goals and so on?
Okay, I think 100% it's a community problem. It's got nothing to do with the game. So I'll give you guys the evidence if anyone is sort of going no, Accolonn. So just to repeat the question for anyone that may want to know, I'm gonna really shorten it. Is modern class design in World of Warcraft to blame for the way raiding pans out? So the way in which we build compositions. So for example, oh my god, no, you're a frost mage, you go fuck yourself. We don't need frost mages because they're not powerful enough. Is Blizzard just failing on the balance side of things that then pushes people to play meta stuff because their champions aren't in the meta for whatever reason or whatever purpose? So it's very easy to show you why this is the players and it's not actually the game. And I'll tell you this much. I used to blame the developers for World of Warcraft as well. Until, and I wish I could say that I realized this myself. I wish that I could be big dick about this and be like, oh yeah, I figured this out, but I didn't. I was watching a video on YouTube. We were reacting to it actually, from someone who they made the video about Final Fantasy XIV, and they were talking about how logs and parses have become a disease in Final Fantasy XIV. And as I was watching that video, I was like, welcome to the modern era, Final Fantasy, bro. In World of Warcraft, it's been a disease for a really long time. So, whatever worked for you. But it sort of clicked when I watched that video. So I'm going to show you guys how many classes have killed all of the bosses in Mythic Sepulchre of the first ones. This is for Mythic, by the way. So it is the hardest that you can do it. This is in the 90th percentile. So this ensures that this will not be people that were boosted. These will be people that actually played themselves. So these are people that scored within the 90th percentile. So you can see that every single class is represented here. Every single spec is represented here. They've all killed the bosses. Here's the numbers. There's passes for each and one. Remember, this is Mythic, so obviously the passes are going to be less than overall. But every single class, every single spec managed to kill all of the bosses on Mythic. This means that every single one of these specs is in the meta. They can all do it. The problem with modern day World of Warcraft mindset, the problem with players these days, is if you are not in the top, you're automatically underpowered. So if you look at the difference between Demonology Warlock and Subtlety Rogues, who's at the bottom, the difference is 9%, give or take, right? Is that a massive difference? No, it's not a massive difference. It's a difference, but it's not big enough to fucking destroy your game. The issue is, if you're a Subtlety Rogue, you're not going to get into any groups unless you play Outlaw. So this means, as players, we've warped the idea of being the best to the point where you're the best even when it doesn't matter. You don't need to go the extra mile. You're doing extra work for what? You can kill all the bosses as a subtlety rogue. You don't need to go outlaw. But we argue you must go outlaw, otherwise you're not playing the best spec in the game. Why? Unless you're going for world first, and this is, I wish I could explain this to the player base. Unless you're going for world first, the extra 9% that Demon Lord, I don't even know if this is actually percent based, because this is a score. I don't think this is an actual DPS breakdown, right? So I think the actual difference in DPS is going to be even fucking lower than that. But unless you're going for world first, there is no reason for you to care about being an outlaw rogue and not being a subtlety rogue. The only reason it would matter for world first is because in world first, every single percentage of damage matter. It's what they base the game on. They literally design their raid teams to get the optimal amount of DPS out of it. This is why all the way back in Cataclysm, during the Onyxia fight, you had Method, I believe at the time, stacking 9 Feral Druids. Why? Because their bleeds were overpowered as fuck. So the Feral Druids would literally run between the two bosses and just bleed the whole time. That's it. They would just literally bleed the whole time. Stolly, you're more than welcome to join, of course. The world first guilds will do this. It doesn't mean you have to. You'll be able to do all of the bosses whichever spec you play. But for some reason, we've entered this mindset where you must play the best spec in the game, otherwise you're just wasting your fucking time. When the numbers do not show that. The numbers do not line up. So here's the DPS breakdown, right? This is for all percentiles. Based on the DPS breakdown, the difference again is minimal. You're looking at in terms of average, right? So average DPS here, you're looking at less than fucking 10% from the top to the bottom. Less than 10%. Why does this matter? Stolly, are you in the channel?
Hello. Yeah, I'm here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the most part, you're right, but I just wanted to jump in and say that for mythic progression, especially this tier, but in the past few tiers where you haven't been raiding, so you wouldn't know much about that. But
yeah,
basically, what has been going on is the tiers started getting harder and harder, like bosses being harder and harder, and for the most part, for actual cutting edge mythic guilds, those differences actually matter quite a lot. Not just in terms of how much damage it does overall, but in the way they do the damage. So if you don't have certain classes to deal with shit, like Demonology Warlocks right now, the strategies are either a lot harder or practically impossible to pull off with a worse group than a Word First guild. So
yeah, but I mean, to be fair though, Ian Azikostas admitted that they had made the raids in Shadowlands way too hard, and that they are going to scale back on that. So I do agree with you. But remember, I was more talking about, because this is not a problem that only arrived in Shadowlands. This was a problem back when I raided in Legion, right? When we were in the same guild. People would swap specs, and then they'll complain about, oh my fuck, I can't play my favorite spec because it's completely ruined. But then the spec is like maybe doing 3% less damage than the other spec, right? But no, my spec's ruined because it can't do all the DPS.
About that.
Yeah.
So that's based on average, right? If you think of average always, then it doesn't matter. But average is also taking a certain consistent performance. So if you can't perform consistently close to very good, then it's more logical for you to swap to a better overall performing spec just based on numbers.
Yeah, but there's
been happening for a long time.
But there would be the flip side of that. if you are a better outlaw rogue than what you are a subtlety rogue, you're going to do better as an outlaw rogue than what you're going to do as a subtlety rogue, even if subtlety is 20% better than outlaw. So I don't even think in nominal terms the differences is enough for people to warrant. Let me ask you this, or let me give you this as a retort. The fact that every single class in the game have managed to take down every single one of the bosses on Mythic proves that every single one of the classes can.
Just also like a plus side to that is a lot of those are not like exactly correct, because a lot of those with shitty specs are re-kills, not first kills, which does matter a lot.
Yeah, but remember, whether it's a re-kill, the fact that they can do it. So the only time I would say a spec is not viable and is broken and should be switched away from is if your group physically cannot kill the boss while you're in that spec. So think back to. Sorry, let me just finish the point here.
Yeah.
Think back to Legion survivability, right? Survival Hunter. When Blizzard first did the rework on survival, and it was the top or the top Simcraft spec, but the worst played spec, because to actually do the DPS was impossible. The boss can't move, you can't move, you basically have to stand the whole time and just be able to DPS. And since that's not possible, the spec would just not do any DPS. Even though you loved it, I remember back then you were like, I fucking wish I can play survival, but it's just broken. There, we can say that's a broken spec, because your guild is effectively going to have to carry you through this fight.
Yeah, that's for the most part, unless you are playing your shitty spec at a very high level, you are essentially being carried through the fight on like Mythic Jailer right now on the progress fight.
I feel like
in the progress that re-clears and first clears are very important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but we're also
with how the design is right now, the 2% might actually speed up the fight enough that you are able to kill it in like before something happens, right?
Yeah.
So on a re-clear, the other people already have more damage because they have the gear. So your spec is by that made viable because you fit within the CD window or whatever.
True.
So it might not be viable on its own, but on a re-clear, it's okay.
Yeah, but you're also talking about Mythic rating, which
is...
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that you are right. Exactly what I was going to say is this is specifically Mythic rating. The problem is this trickles down because Mythic raiders got used to this. They accepted this fact like years ago. That they have to switch specs. It does. I'm sure it bothers them. It bothers me, like for sure. But it's not something I'm going to quit the game over, right?
I never cared about swapping specs when I still Mythic rated because I'm a Warlock. I don't view myself as a Demonology or Affliction Warlock. I'm a Warlock, so I'll play whichever spec as a Warlock is best at the time for the fight. So I never cared about that. I only started caring when you needed different fucking gear sets for every single one of the specs, you know? That's when I really started to care about it, because then you're like grinding your fucking ass off. Basically, the whole time you're not raiding, you're grinding to get all the gear so that you can actually fucking raid in the spec that you want to play for a given fight. But it is just, that's Mythic. Now, Mythic is already sort of cutting-edge content, right? It is, very few people actually do Mythic. If we scale this down to Heroic, do you guys believe that your arguments still hold true on Heroic?
No.
Any class in World of Warcraft can kill any boss on Heroic. It doesn't matter. You could probably play a Disc Priest fucking DPS and you'd be able to take down Heroic bosses, right? Like, if you really wanted to, you could probably do that. You'd be fine.
Let's not go that far, but for its intended role, yes, any spec can do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could do it. You'd be carried a little, but you'd still be able to probably do it. Because Heroic it's tough, but it's not the toughest fights in the world. I just feel like there's a lot of players that sort of exist, and that is partly Blizzard's fault for making raids so incredibly difficult Ian himself admitted that this was their mistake, because now you make fights so hard that even heroic players start to feel like they have to min-max shit, right? So we have to basically figure out exactly how we're going to play. Every single fight has to be perfect. So that's partly the fault of Blizzard, but it's also partly the fault of players, because the player base have adopted this idea, and I said this in a previous stream, there is not a single person on this planet more hardcore than a heroic raid leader. Heroic raid leaders are more hardcore than world first raid leaders. I have seen it with my own fucking eyes, where you'll get an heroic raid leader that takes the game so fucking serious that no one can have fun. That you're not allowed to talk, you're not allowed to laugh. Everyone must have every single thing fucking ready, and your gear must be the best that the game can ever fucking have. You need to run plus 20, plus 35 keys every single week to get all of the best gear in the game, because that's how we're going to play. And if you didn't do all your plus 35 keys, then you're not playing with us and shit like that. And it's like, dude, you're doing heroic, calm the fuck down. Just play the game, have some fun with your friends. You don't need to take shit so seriously. This is heroic. It's easy. You can smash it in a night. So yeah, I feel like the player base have gotten a lot more hardcore. And part of the reason I think this is happening, and I could be completely wrong on this one, this really is just my own opinion, but part of the reason I think this is happening is somehow World of Warcraft really have designed the game around the idea that everyone has to be a hardcore raider, because there's nothing else to do in the game. And I feel when they start doing more casual content, this will probably disappear as well, because those players that really don't want to be that hardcore, they don't want to approach the game that hardcore, they're going to find more casual things to do in the game, and they're going to leave the raiding to the people that do want to be like fucking elitist jerks and assholes, and they just want to do all the base things in the game. So maybe that will help calm things down a little, to where people don't look at the pure numbers of every single spec and class and be like, oh my god, my spec's dead. It's doing 2% less damage than everyone else. And so, yeah, all right, bro. Like, dead spec, bro. You want to talk dead? Let's talk demonology at the end of World of Draenor. That was fucking dead, right? But also on purpose, but still. So, yeah, fucking amazing question. Really enjoyed diving into it. And I realize everyone's going to have their own opinions, and I'm not here to argue with anyone, but I do think that the player base in World of Warcraft just needs to calm the fuck down. And not everything has to be approached as if it's a world first thing. Let the hardcore people enjoy the hardcore, because believe it or not, the fact that people complain about swapping specs suggests, if you complain about the fact that you have to swap specs, you're probably doing content that you're not supposed to be doing. And I know this sounds harsh, but it's the truth. When you're a hardcore raider, so when you do things like Mythic and you enjoy Mythic, swapping specs is just what you do. You know, it's what you do. For example, Preach constantly told Blizzard with the conduit resets, right? Preach constantly told Blizzard, stop fucking forcing us to play the game the way that you want us to play. Allow us to, like, swap our conduits as much as we want. Why? Because as a Mythic Raider, that's what you fucking do. You swap your spec every single fight. You swap your talents. Let me ask you this, Stario, are you still in the channel?
Yes, I am here.
All right. What do you think the chances are in Dragonflight that you're going to pick your talents, right? You're just going to pick one set of talents, and then you're never going to change it for a raid. Like, you're just going to have one group of talents, and that's the talents you take for the raid. What do you think the chances are of that happening?
The chances of me not switching talents between bosses is small. Especially in the case of that talent tree that we're going to have.
Yeah, it's literally almost zero. Because I'll tell you how it used to work back when we still had talent trees. Every single fight, I would have different talents. Even if it's just changing one talent to another talent. Because this fight has one extra ad. This means I need a new talent tree because I need to deal with the extra ad. This fight is pure single target, but a lot of movement. I need new talents because I need to be able to move and also do single target damage. This fight is purely like standstill and just DPS. I need talents for that now. So it's just natural for a hardcore raider to swap.
You are aware of that we are gonna have loadouts, right?
Yeah. I'm not talking about, like, I'm not saying that the new talent tree is going to be fucking miserable and shit. The loadouts is actually amazing. Yeah, the loadouts is like truly one of the greatest things ever. I especially like the fact that they're trying to work on technology now that will allow you to export your talent tree to someone in chat. So you can literally go to another hunter and just be like, yeah, this is the talents that I have now. They click on that and they just import that loadout into their own build. So they can just swap to your loadout, which makes it so fucking cool. Because back in the fucking day, you would have to go online and you would have to change all your talents to that. Now you can just click a button and import talents and start playing around with them.
We had weak auras for that, but yeah.
Yeah. You do have weak auras, but I mean, it's easier now, right, than what it used to be in the past. So I personally love the loadout system. I love where the talents are going. I think it's going to be really fun. But yeah, people should calm down. You don't have to be the best at everything. As long as you get to kill the boss, I feel like that's good enough. That's all you should be going for.
That's the other thing, right? Is if you're playing a spec, like let's say I'm playing Shaman this tier, right? I wanted to play Elemental. It turns out it's not that great. Enhancement is much better. So what I did for the most part is just played Enhancement to all the progress bosses, but I'm playing Elemental in dungeons, I'm playing Elemental in some reclears, I'm playing Elemental when I'm doing Heroic to help my friends, all that shit.
Yeah.
You don't have to play that one spec. Yeah, sure, it would be nice to play Elemental, but you know. If you're gonna do mythic content, you have to accept that you have to make compromises, right?
Yeah, but I also think Blizzard will, in Dragonflight, with their new philosophy around not making raids so stupidly fucking difficult, I think that's also going to help a lot, right? Just getting people to be like, oh, I can play my Elemental because even though I'm not the top DPS, I'm good enough. You know, I'm doing good enough damage that my guild will still be able to kill things.
I think what they need to look at is how they made raids back in like Warlords, for example. Because if you think back, Warlords, none of the actual raids in Warlords had the insane damage requirements or stupid damage intake, stuff like that. True. The difficulty for almost every difficult fight there came from strategy, right? How do I deal with this train boss? How do I deal with the stamps?
The fucking train boss. Right? The fucking train boss, dude.
Warfiend in Gorfind the Hall in like all of these were they had nothing to do with how much damage you're doing. They had nothing to do with anything like that. It's how do I deal with this as a team?
As a team, but also it was more a case of how do I deal damage whilst also not dying, right? So on the train boss, for example, as a range, it's about movement. It's not so much about how much physical DPS you can put out. It's more about I need to move and DPS at the same time. So yeah, I loved World of Dragonflight raiding. That was probably the second most fun I've ever had in World of Warcraft raiding. The first was Wrath of the Lich King. But, oh my god, World of Dragonflight raiding was so fucking fun. Plus, we had a pretty good team back then, so that really helped as well. Anyways, thank you so much for the question. Really appreciate the question. And